Welcome back. This week, we're going to talk about the elements and principles of design, specifically proportion. But guess what? We're going to make it fun because we're going to talk about changed proportion, the ability for us to take the element of proportion and change it to create something beautiful like this for your dining room table or that special spot in your house. So let's get started. What we're going to do today is work with proportion. It's very important for us to look at the container we're going to select. Today, we've selected this wonderful urn. It's from Jim Marvin, and it's a great looking container. If we were going to create something definitive in proportion to this, to the regular rules that we would learn in design school, we would create something that's 1.5 times the height of this container. Today, we're going to talk about changed proportion. What happens with changed proportion is we're going to change the way that we use that proportion. So rather than making an arrangement 1.5 times the height of the container, we're going to make one that's 1.5 times or more the height of the container, but send it out in a horizontal fashion. So with that, we need to work with a base. And again, we're used to taking a piece of styrofoam and putting that down inside here, or if we're working with a fresh arrangement, we'd put a piece of artesia in there. In this case today, I want to use the moss coat. Now, this is a moss coat foam ball. It's been coated on the outside with Spanish moss that's then been dyed a basil color. Inside is an EPS type foam. So it's the little beaded types of styrofoam that are compressed together. This will be the base that we're actually going to use, and we're going to set it up in here. It's going to actually be exposed and become part of the arrangement that we're going to create. The other cool thing about this is it's already pre-finished for us, so we don't have to add moss to it, we don't have to do anything. So it makes it really easy for you to work with. These come in all different forms too. There's wreaths and there's cubes. Today, this is going to work really good for us because it's up over the top of the container and many of our placements are going to come this direction. So it gets it up and above for us. So to work with this, what we're simply going to do is use a little bit of our hot glue. We'll take the hot glue on our brush. Remember that we have it about the consistency of taffy. We're just painting it on the inside of our urn. We place our moss coat on there, and it's glued securely in there. So that's going to be our basis. You know what? If we look at that, that classic shape is very important too. So the first thing we want to do when we create an arrangement is establish what's going to happen with it with our line type of flower. In this case, we're going to use a line foliage. I have this beautiful permanent botanical Nandina foliage with the Nandina berries and everything. Notice how that looks so attractive. It's got great shape and form. This really is the inspiration for the arrangement that we're going to create because it's this piece of foliage that's going to determine how we shape the entire arrangement. We're going to shape it just a little bit. So we're going to use that. And again, 1.5 times the height of our container, but we're going to go this direction. We're changing the proportion. So I use my Nip-X. I'm going to dip this right in my hot glue and make my placement directly into the foam. Now that's going to hold that nice and secure, and I can go back and shape this just a little bit as we work along. Now look at how that horizontal style starts to flow a little bit with our arrangement, and we start to already get a wonderful impression of what this arrangement is going to look like. Now, focal flowers are important, so we're going to add a couple focal flowers right now. Love these beautiful dahlias. And again, these guys are from Windward. You can notice all the different color nuances that are in there. We're going to cut it off short, and we're going to place it directly into the foam ball. We're going to go nice and tight with that too, so that you notice how it's close, it's right on the surface. It takes up a lot of square footage in our arrangement itself so that we don't have to add a lot of flowers or filler around it. It's also where our eye is going to be drawn to. Notice how our eye follows up that Nandina right to that dahlia. We're going to add a little bit of repetition and emphasis to this dahlia by placing a second dahlia with it. This This one's going in not nearly as far and kind of hanging over the top of the second one. That gives us another great impression, and it emphasizes what's happening right here. Now notice we're getting a few of those glue webs. Remember, secret tip from JTV, once we're finished with this, a heat gun or a hairdryer, we just wave it over the entire thing and that gets rid of all those spider webs. So now we're going to work with a few of the poppies. And we're going to continue our line and extend it out. Look at these great poppies, how they have the great velvety texture. They look just like a real poppy. We're going to use varied lengths so that they're not all exactly the same. I'm also going to trim this bud off because we have the bud in the exact same place on the other poppies, so I want to add this one in a different place so that it's coming out of the arrangement different. Because these guys all have wires in them, I can shape and form them any direction I want to. Kind of spoils you when you start to work with permanent botanicals because you can really change and create with them. When we're working with fresh flowers, we kind of have to let the flowers dictate the way that they grew to create something wonderful. So we'll add a few more poppies. Now you'll notice that I added some of the buds at this end, and I'm going to curl those around. Now here's a really cool technique. I'm going to take this poppy bud and put it in the other side. Now, this traditionally would look like it would be great here. What we're going to do is we're going to bend that up over the top. It's almost giving our arrangement the impression that the wind is pushing it from this side and changing the proportion of the bouquet. So, as you can see, we've added our line flowers and our focal flowers that are starting to actually give movement to the design and changing the proportion for us. Now it's time for us to go back. We're going to add a few filler flowers and also some interest factors that are going to add a little bit of texture to this design as well. Knowing about the elements and principles of design is extremely important. And so when we add those extra items, it's going to make our arrangement even more fun as well as being visually attractive for us. So we're going to add a few of these. This is a silk botanical, a stilby. It adds texture as well as that great chartreuse green color. And notice that we've added it on one side. So to balance that out, I want to come back to this side and add a little bit more of it as well. Helps us reinforce that line. A few of the little foxtails just add great interest. The great thing about JTV, you can watch JTV over and over again until you get the technique perfected. A little bit of that berry vine. We're also going to add just a little bit of ivy. Now foliage, we've always talked about foliage. I don't like a lot of foliage in the bouquet because I want it to be an interesting part. It doesn't need to be a huge mass that fills in everything else. We want to have it be unique and serving a purpose. So that piece winds through there and brings our eye accordingly. We're going to add one down here too, so that it starts to help us cover up a little bit of that moss coat. But notice where the moss coat shows through, it's not a problem because it's already the same color as the arrangement. Now, something for a little bit of interest. We're going to add this beautiful persimmon branch because that's really cool and it adds an extra dynamic portion to the arrangement. We're going to counterbalance the weight of that persimmon branch back here on this side. And I think there's just a little bit too much of it. That's a little bit better. So then I'll add this guy back here so that he's just sneaking over the top of our dahlias. And finally, just to kick up the color a little bit, I'm going to add some of these wonderful pods. Look at that great coloration. This is like a Rudbeckia pod or maybe a sunflower pod. It's kind of a fantasy flower because it may not be botanically correct, but because they've used natural leaves and the natural coloration, it looks really real. So in this case, we use a little bit of that to make it look fun. Look at how that color works with the other colors we already have. The rest of these items then we can save for another time because now we've got enough and we have that wonderful motion going. It's just going back and shaping things a little bit so that it all starts to work together. So now, the final step I want to work with is adding a little bit of ribbon. Now I certainly don't want to add a traditional style bow, but at the same time I want to add another texture that will add just a little bit of interest and make the nuances of the bouquet even more interesting. So we're going to use two different types. Number one, a sheer that looks like this. We're simply going to measure it off and cut it off. I've looped it through the arrangement so I kind of have a feeling of where it's going to go. Also, with our other one, this is a great little chenille ribbon. And again, notice how it naturally loops and kind of follows that same line that we've created in the arrangement. Now I can simply grab these and tie them in a couple spots so they don't run away. To secure this on this end, I'll need my chopstick. Again, we're just going to push that right into the moss coat itself. Works easily because you're just simply able to take the ribbon and push it right into the foam. It's a great, easy trick, and it holds it really securely. So now we have an arrangement that normally would have been 1.5 times the height of the container, and we've changed it to be a horizontal arrangement that goes 1.5 times or more the width of the container. That's what changed proportion is all about. Now let's talk about changed proportion as it relates to reverse proportion. In this case, we can bring this arrangement over to the side of the table. Changed proportion means that we change it from going vertically to horizontally. In reverse proportion, we're going to change it to go vertically. So simply by taking this arrangement and bending some of the permanent botanicals down, we can change the proportion to reverse. So in this case, we've taken this and created a changed proportion that's actually reverse proportion, taking it 1.5 times the depth rather than the height or a horizontal width of the container. So it's important to think about the different ways that you can use an arrangement like this. Reverse proportion or change proportion. Something like this could sit on top of a cabinet, or the elongated form could also sit as a centerpiece on a table. You've got lots of creative ways that you can use those secrets that you learn here at JTV. So, what did we learn today? We learned about a new technique, how we think about proportion and how that technique can be changed. Changed proportion or reverse proportion. Either way, when we work with this, it's a fun thing to be able to create. And you know what? You can create it out of fresh flowers, or you can create it out of permanent botanicals. You get to decide. But you know what? It's great because the holidays are coming and there's great decorations that you can create around the house. Wouldn't it be fun to create something like this for your dining room table? And you know, with the techniques you learn here at JTV, you can learn and perfect those and create something that makes everyone know that you're a wonderful floral designer. Until then, keep having fun with flowers.